Welcome to the Hellfire Book Club. Today, we delve into the eerie world of Stephen King's Pet Sematary, a novel that combines supernatural horror with profound emotional depth. Pet Sematary tells the story of the Creed family who moved to a rural town in Maine, only to discover a mysterious burial ground that brings the dead back to life. The story is structured in 3 parts. In part 1, we meet the main characters: Lewis Creed, the protagonist, a doctor looking for a fresh start in Maine; Rachel Creed, his wife, who harbors a deep fear of death; Ellie Creed, their curious daughter who finds the pet cemetery; Gage Creed, their young son; Judd Crandall, the elderly neighbor who introduces them to the burial ground; and Church, Ellie's beloved cat. The Creed family moves to a new home in Ludlow, Maine. Their neighbor, Judd Crandall, introduces them to the pet cemetery where local children bury their deceased pets. Tragedy strikes when Ellie's cat, Church, is killed by a car. Judd takes Lewis beyond the pet cemetery to an ancient burial ground where they bury Church. The next day, Church returns, but he is not the same. The supernatural events escalate when Gage is tragically killed by a speeding truck. Overcome with grief and unable to accept his son's death, Lewis contemplates using the burial ground's power despite Judd's warnings about its dark consequences. This section delves deeply into Lewis's internal struggle and the unfolding horror as he decides to exhume Gage and bury him in the Micmac burial ground. In the final part, Gage returns from the dead, but he is transformed into something malevolent. The climax of the story unfolds as the reanimated Gage begins a murderous rampage. The horror culminates in a confrontation between Lewis and the undead Gage, leading to a devastating and tragic conclusion. Lewis's final act is driven by a desperate, misguided hope as he buries his wife, Rachel, in the burial ground, unable to learn from his past mistakes. The story also includes an interesting subplot regarding Rachel. She has a fear of death due to a traumatic childhood experience with her sister Zelda, who died of spinal meningitis. This adds a layer of psychological horror and explains her aversion to discussions about death. This novel also covers several themes. It explores the natural cycle of life and death, emphasizing that some things are better left undisturbed. The story deeply examines the lengths to which people will go to cope with grief that follows the loss of loved ones. Lastly, the book delves into the idea that tampering with natural laws has dire consequences, often worse than the initial loss. However, it's important to note some critiques of Pet Sematary. Some readers find the pacing slow in certain parts, particularly the build-up before the major tragic events. Lewis's decisions, especially in using the burial ground, can sometimes feel irrational and frustrating, even when considering his grief. After all, he's a doctor and should have a more rational reaction. Pet Sematary is a masterfully crafted horror novel that blends supernatural elements with profound emotional depth. Stephen King's exploration of death, grief, and the consequences of defying nature makes this a compelling and thought-provoking read. The characters are well developed, and the plot is both engaging and terrifying. Thanks for tuning in to the Hellfire Book Club. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a like and subscribe to our channel. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment or send us your feedback. And if you have any book suggestions for future episodes, let us know. Your support helps us bring you more intriguing content. Until next time, keep exploring the unexplained.